Julie Christie's name carries a certain glow that immediately brings to mind the glamour and changes of the 1960s and beyond. Even if decades have passed, her face and spirit resonate with anyone who remembers the new Hollywood era, that freer, more daring wave of filmmaking that rocked the studio system. What's extraordinary is how, from the very start, Julie carried with her a certain gentle conviction, never quite seeking fame, yet illuminating every scene she stepped into. Today she stands as a figure that older viewers can still relate to, a symbol of independence, beauty, and the willingness to live on one's own terms, something that feels all the more meaningful now. It all began in 1940 when Julie was born far from the bustling Western film capitals. She arrived in Chabwa, Assam, in what was then British-ruled India. Her father ran a tea plantation, and her earliest memories involve fragrant leaves, wide-open skies, and a sense of distance from all those big movie dreams that existed in faraway London or Hollywood. As a little girl in the early 1940s, she had no notion of the bright lights that would one day follow her. She was simply Julie, a curious, observant child with a love for stories and a certain sense of wonder about the world. When World War II ended, she returned with her family to England, stepping into a quieter life in the countryside. But that serene backdrop gave her plenty of space to nurture her imagination. By the time she was a teenager, in the mid-1950s, Julie's aspirations started taking shape. Although she wasn't the sort to declare herself the next big star, she discovered a passion for acting in local school plays. It wasn't the applause that intrigued her. It was the chance to explore different roles, to become someone else for a while. That felt deeply freeing. She was a dreamer, yet also down to earth. And she found comfort in the idea that acting might give her a chance to communicate powerful emotions without needing to share her own private feelings. Even then, she had a certain guardedness about her personal life, never quite comfortable in large crowds or under bright spotlights. In the late 1950s, Julie took a more concrete step toward her future when she enrolled at the Central School of Speech and Drama in London. Anyone who met her in those corridors could sense her poise and natural presence. Though she wasn't the loudest in the room, she had a way of listening, of focusing on what people said, which would later become her signature approach on screen, an intensity that spoke volumes even when she said very little. Acting classes were often rigorous, with long days spent perfecting diction, posture, and stage movement. But Julie embraced it, seeing it as a way to become more deeply human rather than chasing stardom. Her earliest professional breaks came in the early 1960s. She dipped her toe into television with small parts on BBC series, where her ability to convey both vulnerability and quiet strength caught the attention of casting directors. Around 1962 and 1963, the entire British film scene was looking for fresh faces that could embody the cultural shift of the swinging 60s. Julie seemed an ideal fit. She had a delicate beauty, but also a modern edge, reflecting a world that was about to explode with change. In 1963, she landed a memorable part in Billy Liar, directed by John Schlesinger. This marked her first real leap into cinematic relevance. There's a lingering story from that set. A senior crew member recalled how Julie, while in full costume, would slip out during breaks to read quietly in a corner. She wasn't aloof or unfriendly. She was just thoughtful and private, signaling the unique mix of grace and reserve that would define her career. As the mid-1960s arrived, Julie's name started popping up in conversations among film enthusiasts. The year 1965 was pivotal. First, she starred in Schlesinger's Darling, playing a complex, free-spirited model navigating London's fashion scene. It was edgy, it was fresh, and it captured the swirling sense of youth culture that had swept across Britain. Critics went wild for Julie's performance, praising her for breathing real life into a character who was equal parts charming and tragic. When she won the Academy Award for Best Actress at just 25, her reaction was one of genuine surprise more than anything. She famously avoided a big public spectacle afterward. While many would have used that moment to springboard into constant publicity, Julie instead ducked away from the spotlight, giving only a few interviews and focusing on her next projects. That same year, she starred in Dr. Zhivago, also directed by David Lean. Though overshadowed in public memory by Darling, it was another massive success, placing Julie at the heart of big-budget, sweeping epics. Her portrayal of Lara remains iconic, the ethereal beauty among snow-laden landscapes, caught in the turbulence of the Russian Revolution. In private, Julie reportedly found filming to be an eye-opening experience. On set, she was confronted with the magnitude of Hollywood's scale, the giant budgets, the grand sets. Yet she retained her humility, forging genuine friendships with the crew, and always showing up prepared but quietly for her scenes. This film solidified her international fame, but it also cemented her ambivalence about global stardom. While embracing the art of acting, Julie remained wary of the fame surrounding it, a sentiment she would quietly carry throughout her life. By 1966, Julie's career soared to new heights. She starred in François Truffaut's Fahrenheit 451, playing dual roles that demanded both her subtlety and her intellect. She found the story's critique of censorship fascinating, and in interviews she spoke passionately about freedom of expression. Even then, you could see the seeds of her later activism taking root. She was never one to conform quietly, even if her protests were softly spoken. In 1967, she reunited with Schlesinger for Far from the Madding Crowd, taking on the role of Bathsheba Everdeen. Filmed in rustic English settings, it mirrored some of the gentler aspects of her own upbringing. Julie was never happier than when on location in the countryside, far from paparazzi. Her portrayal blended spirited independence with a heartfelt vulnerability, a combination that made her an immediate feminist icon to many young women. The press began calling her a symbol of the free woman, a title she found flattering yet slightly overwhelming. She hoped people realized that playing these roles didn't always reflect her exact stance in real life. She had her insecurities, her shyness. Still, the roles she chose in the late 60s often aligned with women's growing fight for independence, and she became a cultural figure of that movement, almost by accident. As the 1960s drew to a close, Julie's personal relationships attracted media attention, especially her bond with Warren Beatty. Though they were in the public eye, both seemed determined to keep private matters private. The press often tried to spin them as a celebrity power couple, but Julie managed to keep a lid on most personal details. Friends from that period remember Julie retreating to quieter corners of parties, sipping a drink and listening to music rather than engaging in flamboyant social scenes. She enjoyed conversations about books, history, and social justice far more than she did the ephemeral chatter of stardom. She was there to create, to express, to be a part of a changing world, but she was never particularly keen on the red carpet frenzy. Moving into the early 1970s, Julie had another major high point with McCabe and Mrs. Miller, 1971, directed by Robert Altman. This film captured the gritty spirit of New Hollywood, defying the polished style of classic studio pictures in favor of a rawer, more realistic tone. Julie played Constance Miller, a worldly madam in a snowy frontier town, opposite Warren Beatty's brash gambler. Critics hailed it for its moody cinematography and unorthodox structure, and Julie's performance as a practical, somewhat sardonic woman with hidden depths was singled out for praise. The film's on-set environment matched the unpolished vibe on screen. The cast lived in rudimentary conditions in the Canadian wilderness. Julie, in typical fashion, embraced the setting, spending her off hours outdoors, enjoying the natural surroundings, content to escape the usual Hollywood commotion. Julie's role in The Go-Between also came in 1971, reuniting her with director Joseph Losey. It was another period piece set in England, and though overshadowed by McCabe and Mrs. Miller, it exemplified her range. She could be bold and independent in one film, then refined and elegant in another. By the end of 1971, she was widely regarded as one of the most talented actresses of her generation, weaving seamlessly between American productions and British cinema, forging a bridge between the mainstream and the avant-garde that defined the new Hollywood ethos. Don't Look Now, in 1973, pushed her further into daring territory. A psychological thriller directed by Nicholas Roeg, it contained a then controversial love scene with Donald Sutherland that fueled endless speculation. Was it simulated or real? Critics and fans dissected every frame. Julie, for her part, rarely addressed the controversy directly, letting the artistry speak for itself. Her silence only heightened the sense of mystique around her, reinforcing her image as someone who refused to chase publicity. In interviews, she would politely deflect tabloid-style questioning, preferring to talk about the film's emotional undertones and the complexity of grief depicted on screen. In 1975, she teamed up again with Warren Beatty for Shampoo, a satirical look at the shallow side of Los Angeles and the sexual politics of the era. Directed by Hal Ashby, it was a box office hit that further solidified Julie's standing as a liberated modern icon. Yet the irony was always there. She portrayed these glamorous and sometimes reckless individuals. Yet in real life, she was drawn to quiet reflection and a simpler, more authentic existence. She'd slip away from LA whenever she could, heading back to England or traveling to remote places where she could just be herself. By the late 1970s, Julie was showing signs of restlessness with the film industry. She appeared in Heaven Can Wait, 1978, another comedic success with Beatty. But privately, friends noticed that she was becoming more outspoken about her dislike of constant scrutiny. She wasn't interested in being a celebrity product, marketed for the next big role or talk show. Instead, she began pulling back. She even turned down several big offers, telling colleagues she needed space to live a real life, one unencumbered by demands for more interviews, more appearances, more Hollywood shine. The early 1980s brought a quieter phase. Julie took roles sporadically, including the haunting Memoirs of a Survivor, 1981, based on a Doris Lessing novel. The film was low profile, reflective of the darker introspective mood she was in. She spent more time in the English countryside, engaging in political and environmental causes. By then, the press started calling her reclusive, a term that often bemused her. She wasn't hiding from the world. She was just choosing to live differently. Living in a rural area felt more genuine. She could tend a small garden, read voraciously, and support causes she believed in, all without the glare of flashing cameras. Around 1986, she appeared in Power, a political drama featuring Richard Gere and Gene Hackman. While promoting it, Julie made a few subdued public appearances, but fans noticed her reluctance to talk about her personal affairs. Reporters would pry about her relationships, her plans, or her beliefs, and she would gently steer the conversation back to the film. She expressed her concern over the commercial direction of Hollywood at the time, lamenting that the new wave of creative experimentation from the late 1960s and early 1970s had largely given way to formulaic blockbusters. Through the later 1980s and early 1990s, Julie continued with select projects, turning up in films like Fools of Fortune, 1990. Nothing overshadowed her earlier triumphs, but that didn't bother her. She was content to let her legacy speak for itself. She quietly supported environmental issues, animal rights, and various progressive causes, always on her terms. Friends within the industry described her as kind but distant, someone who could re-emerge on a film set and do brilliant work, then vanish once more into the hills and meadows of England. A small but noteworthy moment arrived in 1997 with Afterglow, directed by Alan Rudolph. Julie's performance as a former actress, dealing with the emotional distance in her marriage, earned her another Academy Award nomination. She lost to Helen Hunt that year, but for many fans, seeing Julie recognized again felt like a victory in itself. She walked the red carpet, gave a handful of interviews that were polite but guarded, then quietly flew back home. The nomination reminded audiences that her talent was undiminished, even if she no longer played the media game. Julie's activism became more pronounced as she entered the new millennium. She was vocal against the British government's stance on certain international conflicts, and she lent her voice to campaigns protesting animal cruelty and environmental degradation. Reporters still tried to corner her for more personal details. Was she married? Did she have children? Why didn't she appear in more films? Julie would answer kindly but succinctly. Over time, her refusal to become a tabloid fixture became something of a legend in itself, a trait that caused both admiration and frustration in the press. In 2004, she had a cameo in Troy, playing Thetis, mother of Achilles. It was an odd but intriguing choice. The grand historical epic harkened back to the scale of Dr. Zhivago, but her role was relatively small. That same year, she famously appeared in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban as Madame Rosmerta, though her role was also fleeting. She joked in an interview that she'd only agreed because she liked the magic of the Potter universe, and because the countryside near the set was beautiful for long walks. One of her most celebrated late-career performances came in 2006 with Away from Her, directed by Sarah Polley. She portrayed Fiona, a woman suffering from Alzheimer's disease. The film was deeply emotional, focusing on a long-married couple facing the slow unraveling of memory. Julie's nuanced performance earned her yet another Academy Award nomination, bringing her name back into the awards conversation after nearly a decade. She considered the role a profound personal challenge, as it touched on questions of identity, love, and loss that she'd been pondering for years. Julie attended the Oscars ceremony but slipped out as soon as the show ended, politely avoiding the after-parties. As the 2010s advanced, Julie made fewer and fewer on-screen appearances. She and her longtime partner, journalist Duncan Campbell, had been together for many years, and though there were rumors they married in 2008, she never made a big announcement. She continued to live in the English countryside, content with daily rhythms that involved reading, walking, and tending to her home. Close friends say she loved spending quiet mornings in her garden, savoring the simple joy of fresh air and the smell of wet earth. Many recall her unshakable habit of writing letters, handwritten notes, not emails, to keep in touch with the few people she truly trusted. In the background, Julie also provided support to several film preservation funds and educational scholarships for young actors. These initiatives were rarely publicized, but occasionally a beneficiary would mention the help they'd received. That was how Julie liked it: quiet involvement, meaningful impact without personal fanfare. She once confided in a close friend that fame had an inevitable price. It could eclipse your real self, turning you into a product rather than a person. For her, stepping away was necessary, if only to maintain that sense of authenticity she valued above all else. The controversies she encountered over the years mostly revolved around her vocal stances on social and political issues. She spoke out against certain wars and criticized the media's focus on superficiality. Some in the industry found her naive or overly idealistic, but she pressed on, undeterred. In the late 2000s, a few tabloids tried to stir gossip about her reclusive ways, alleging that she was difficult or that her aloofness was a sign of fading mental health. Colleagues quickly jumped to her defense, emphasizing that Julie's choice to live outside the public eye was an act of self-preservation, not a result of decline or arrogance. By the mid-2010s, Julie was in her mid-70s, and age naturally brought its own set of challenges. She experienced some health scares, nothing too publicized, but enough to remind her fans that their beloved star was indeed human. She was rumored to deal with a bit of memory fatigue, though never confirmed anything personally. Those who visited her said she remained sharp, witty, and full of thoughtful remarks about the world. She just stayed away from the spotlight, preferring the companionship of a few close friends and the comfort of rural life. Despite stepping back, she remained a beloved figure in cinematic discussions. Retrospectives of New Hollywood would inevitably place her name alongside the likes of Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway, Jack Nicholson, and others who helped reshape American cinema. Yet Julie's particular path was always singular. She was the British actress who, while never fully belonging to the Hollywood system, represented the very essence of that transformative period. She was unafraid of raw emotion on screen, unafraid of challenging roles, and famously unconcerned with the trappings of stardom. In her later years, Julie's reclusiveness occasionally sparked debates. Some critics wondered if her talents had been underutilized, if she might have given us more unforgettable roles had she stayed in the limelight. Others praised her integrity, seeing her exit from Hollywood as a bold statement that one's personal well-being matters more than any trophy or paycheck. A few insiders insisted she was still reading scripts from time to time, but only if they offered something truly meaningful, nothing that would disrupt her quiet existence. And if that script never came, so be it. Her final on-screen appearances in the late 2000s and 10s were cameo roles and voiceover work for documentaries related to environmental causes. In one project, she narrated a short film about a threatened wildlife reserve delivering a heartfelt plea for conservation. Those who heard her voice recognized that timeless calm, that sense of quiet urgency that made her so captivating decades ago. Even in these small efforts, Julie demonstrated her commitment to issues she cared about, blending her artistic gifts with her personal passions. For those who followed her story closely, one of the more touching aspects has been her lasting impact on women's sense of self-determination. At a time when actresses were often seen as mere adornments, Julie's characters were multidimensional and spoke to a generation that demanded more autonomy and complexity for women in film. In that sense, she was a feminist figure, whether she intended to be or not. She inspired countless younger talents to push beyond the limits of conventional roles, making it clear that beauty and substance need not be at odds. As for her final reflections, Julie has always maintained a certain mystery. Even close friends have shared that she speaks more through gesture and expression than grand pronouncements. She acknowledged that her life took unexpected turns, from the tea plantations of Assam to the highest honors in cinema, and that she feels gratitude for the experiences. But she also felt relief stepping away from the relentless pace, content to have contributed her part to film history without letting it devour her. That same spirit of personal freedom and quiet determination remains compelling even now. We may live in an age of social media and 24-hour gossip, but Julie's life serves as a reminder that stepping away is a choice. She lived and continues to live on her own terms, championing a lifestyle that is true to New Hollywood in its rejection of empty glamour. If she had followed the usual path, attending every premiere, giving countless interviews, she might have become a different person entirely. Instead, she chose to protect the core of who she was, offering her talent to the world while retaining the sanctuary of a private life. Even now, with her film credits behind her and the quiet life she has embraced, her presence lingers in each role she once brought to life. And perhaps that's the best way to remember her. A radiant figure from a transformative era in cinema, whose thoughtful, grounded spirit continues to illuminate those iconic films we hold dear. When we watch those old movies, we can sense the passion, the sincerity, and the subtle defiance she carried within her, sparking a conversation that still resonates today. She might not enjoy being called a legend, but for so many of us, especially those who lived through the times she helped define, Julie Christie remains just that, and so much more. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.